Alright, so recently I dropped the 404 drum kit, and since I've released it, I've had quite a few people asking how the sounds in the kit were made. In this video, I'm going to be going over drum synthesis and showing you how you can make your very own kicks, snares and hi-hats using the free synth plugin Vital. This is part 1 of what will be a 3-part series where I'll also be covering bass sounds as well as more melodic sounds. Now just a quick disclaimer, not all of the sounds from the drum kit were made with Vital, with things like the kicks and 808s being made in other plugins. These other plugins include Kick 2, Punchbox and Serum. For this video, I'm just going to be using Vital alongside free or stock plugins so everybody can follow along regardless of budget. Because we're going to be working with sub-frequencies in this video, you're going to want to make sure that you're listening through good quality studio monitors or headphones. Now with all that stuff out the way, let's start by creating a kick. A kick is essentially just a sine wave that uses an LFO to modulate the pitch of your oscillator. We're going to beef our kick up a little bit by using a click sample as well as some effects. So starting off with the initialized preset, you first want to come over to oscillator 1 and select the basic shapes wavetable. By default, this is going to give you a basic sine wave. All I'm going to do now is come over to the pitch section and bring this down by 24 semitones. If you hold shift while dragging this parameter down, it's going to allow you to decrease the pitch in 12 semitone increments. Next, we need to shape this sound with an envelope, so I'm just going to draw a steep curve into envelope 1. Now you will have heard there that we have a bit of a click at the start of this sample, and that's due to the phase randomization. Bringing this down to 0% will get rid of that click by making sure that each time you hit a key, the waveform is going to be starting from the 0 point of your sine wave. The next thing I want to do is modulate the pitch of this kick, so each time I press a key, the pitch is going to decrease quickly. This is going to give us that punchy sound that we're looking for. I'm going to be using an LFO to do this, so to begin with, I'm just going to draw a nice steep curve into LFO 1. Once I've drawn this curve in, I'm then going to take LFO 1 and drag it over to the coarse pitch of oscillator 1. Now I just want to mess around with this modulation amount until I've got something that sounds nice and punchy. So now I've got the basic shape of my kick, the next thing I want to do is layer this with a click sample. This will help the initial transient of our kick have a bit more impact before the pitch rolls off. So I'm just going to turn my sampler on, and I already have some click samples prepared, so I'm going to drag them in and see which one sounds the best. Alright, so I like the sound of click 4, but what I am going to do is just bring the pitch of it down. Next, I'm going to come back over to LFO 1, and this time I'm going to drag it onto the level of my sampler. I'm then going to bring the level of the sampler down and mess around with the modulation amount until I have a nice punchy sound. Right, now it's time to head over to the effects section and add some distortion to really get this kick hitting. So first I want to turn on the distortion and make sure that I've got it set to soft clip. Next I'm going to slowly increase the drive until a nice level of distortion is being added to my kick. The last thing I want to do here is add an equalizer just to further boost some of them lower frequencies. And what we have now is a really punchy kick that can be bounced to audio to be used in your beats, or if you want to take it even further, you can go ahead and add some of your favourite third-party effects to it. Next up, we're going to take a look at how to make some closed hi-hats. There's loads of different ways to make these, I'm just going to show you my preferred way. Like most sounds, you're going to want to be starting with the initialized preset. And for this sound, we're actually going to be sticking with this initial wave too. Obviously, hi-hats sit a lot higher in the frequency spectrum, so I'm going to start by increasing the pitch by 2 octaves or 24 semitones. I'm then going to come over to the unison section and add 16 voices of unison and turn the detune amount up to 100. Now you're probably thinking this sounds nothing like a hi-hat yet, but there are still a few things we need to do to it. The first thing I want to do is add some shape to the sound, and to do this I'm going to be using LFO 1, and I'm just going to go ahead and assign it to the level of my oscillator. You want to make sure that you've got the LFO's mode on envelope, and then you want to go ahead and draw a really short steep curve. Next you want to bring the level of your oscillator all the way down and the modulation amount all the way up. Now that the shape of the sound is done, I'm next going to come into the morphing section and choose formant scale. From here you just want to mess with this knob until you've got a bit more of a metallic sound. I like to have mine somewhere between about 70 and 80%. Right, from here we just need to add a filter and a couple of effects to complete our hi-hat sound. So first I'm going to turn on filter 1, and from the analog section I'm going to select BPN. Next I'm going to bring the cutoff to around 60 or 70 semitones and bring the resonance up until it sounds good. Now from the effects section, the first thing I want to add is some distortion. Again, I'm going to be using soft clip, and I'm just going to increase the drive a little bit. And lastly, I'm just going to use an equalizer to further boost some of the higher frequencies. Now it's also optional to turn on your sampler, which by default will contain white noise. All you want to do with this is take LFO1 and drag it onto the level, bring this knob all the way down, and then mess around with the modulation amount. Once I've got the basic sound done for my hi-hats, I then like to mess around with some effects, and one of my favourite ones to use is the kilohertz frequency shifter. As the name suggests, this takes all the frequencies from your sound and shifts them either up or down. And lastly, we're going to take a look at how to make some nice punchy snares. Basically, a snare is just a sine wave that has some white noise layered on top of it. So from our initial preset, I'm first going to come into the wavetable section and select basic shapes. I'm then just going to come over to the coarse pitch and bring it down by about 4 or 5 semitones. Now, of course, we want to layer this with some white noise, so I'm next going to turn on my sampler, which already has white noise in it, and I'm then just going to turn the level all the way up. We want this snare to be quite snappy, so I'm going to use envelope 1 and draw a really short curve to shape the sound. Just like that, we already have a sound that somewhat resembles a snare. This first oscillator is sticking out quite a bit, so I'm just going to take LFO1 and make a really steep curve out of this too. From here, I can assign this to the level of my oscillator and just mess around with the modulation amount. Now over in the effects section, again I'm going to be adding soft clip distortion. As I've done for all of the rest of my sounds, I'm just going to slowly increase the drive until I've got a sound that I like. For my snare sound, I'm also going to enable a post filter that's just going to cut out some of the low end. By default, this is going to be a high pass filter, so you just want to take the blend and turn it all the way to the other side. And lastly, I'm just going to use an equalizer to boost some of these higher mids. And yeah, that is going to bring us to the end of the video. Hopefully after watching this video, you'll have a basic understanding of drum synthesis and how it works. Remember, I'll be following this tutorial up with a video on bass synthesis, as well as one on how to synthesize more melodic sounds. So if you enjoyed this video, or if you learned anything new from it, then make sure to hit the thumbs up button before you leave. And if you're new to the channel, then do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. As usual, all of the presets that I made in this video, as well as any samples that I used, will be available to Patreon members. I'll leave a link where you can check that out in the video description. If you'd like to know how to take these sounds and make your own drum patterns, then I'll leave a link to that video up here. Then I'll just leave you a random video from the channel down here. Big shout out to anybody that's still here at the end of the video. I've been Era, thanks for watching, and I'll hopefully catch you all in the next one.